Texas has been growing for a long time, but the amount of growth we've seen recently is pretty remarkable. Since 2020, the state has added more than 2.5 million people, bringing the population to nearly 32 million. A lot of that growth has happened around Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio, placing millions of potential visitors within a driving distance of the state's largest parks. You have more families looking for things to do close to home, more potential season pass holders, and more people already traveling around the state for sports, concerts, conventions, and major events. Texas parks can also operate for most of the year. The summer heat creates plenty of challenges, but the season extends well beyond the summer.
It's too hot down here.
Spring break, Halloween, Christmas, and many of the winter weekends bring plenty of people into the parks. Companies are spending money like they believe the audience is only going to continue growing. Universal Kids Resort is now open in Frisco, giving families with younger kids an entirely new theme park built specifically for them. Six Flags Over Texas has opened Tormenta, a record-breaking dive coaster that completely changed the park's skyline. Here in Austin, COTALAND is taking shape at the Circuit of Americas. Circuit Breaker, Palindrome, and Texas Wildcat are helping turn it into the legitimate amusement park the city never really had. SeaWorld San Antonio recently opened Barracuda Strike, and Fiesta, Texas is preparing to open Werewolf Gorge in 2027. And that's a lot happening in one state over a pretty short period of time. So there has to be a reason these companies are investing this heavily into Texas right now. What do they see here? Texas has supported major amusement parks for more than 60 years, although that history hasn't always gone the way people expected. And I think the best place to begin with this is Six Flags Over Texas, one of the parks that helped establish the regional theme park model in the first place. Thanks for tuning in to ThrillNerds. Today we're talking all things Texas parks, from the history that brought us here to the exciting future being built across the state. If that sounds like your type of thing, don't forget to subscribe and let's get right into it. Six Flags Over Texas opened in Arlington in 1961, directly between Dallas and Fort Worth. That location allowed it to pull guests from both cities without needing to be in the middle of either one. People could drive to Arlington, spend the day at the park, and still make it home that night. That regional approach may sound completely normal now, but Six Flags Over Texas was one of the first parks in the country designed around it. Disneyland had already shown what a modern theme park could be, but most families couldn't simply travel to California. Six Flags took some of those ideas, including themed areas and attractions built around a larger setting, and created something meant for people living in the surrounding region. North Texas was also growing quickly. More families owned cars, new highways made it easier to travel between cities, and the suburbs around Dallas and Fort Worth continued to expand. Six Flags Over Texas gave those families a major attraction close enough to visit regularly. The idea worked well enough that Six Flags carried the model into other states, opening Six Flags Over Georgia in 1967 and Six Flags Over Mid-America in 1971. Texas continued adding parks too. AstroWorld opened in Houston in 1968, right across the highway from the Astrodome. Over time, it became the home to rides like Texas Cyclone, Greased Lightning, and Ultra Twister. Schlitterbahn opened in New Braunfels in 1979. It began as a much smaller water park built around the Kamal River and the existing resort. As it grew, Schlitterbahn developed rides that helped change what people expected from a water park, including some of the earliest uphill water coasters. Then SeaWorld of Texas opened in San Antonio in 1988. The park was enormous and heavily focused on marine life and live shows. Rides that gradually became a larger part of the experience, eventually giving us attractions like Great White, Steel Eel, and Texas Stingray. Fiesta Texas followed in 1992. The original version of Fiesta Texas was very different from the Six Flags park we know today. It was built around Texas music, live entertainment, and the natural quarry setting with the Rattler serving as its main roller coaster. By the early 90s, Texas already had major parks in North Texas, Houston, New Braunfels, and San Antonio. They didn't all offer the same experience, and they didn't need to. Each one had a large regional audience surrounding it. A lot of the things helping Texas parks today were already working back then. Growing cities, families willing to drive, and enough distance between the major population centers for each park to develop its own audience.
Why are so many people here?
Those cities are much larger now, but population alone has never guaranteed success. Houston had millions of residents and one of the most recognizable parks in Texas, and in 2005, AstroWorld still closed. AstroWorld is where the history of Texas theme parks gets a little bit more complicated. For 37 years, it was a major part of growing up in Houston. It had the Texas Cyclone, Greased Lightning, Thunder River, Ultra Twister, and eventually an entire water park included with admission. Houston was already one of the largest cities in the country, so there were certainly enough people living nearby to support a park. But by the early 2000s, AstroWorld had started to fall behind. Attendance was declining, the park needed a lot of work, and Six Flags was dealing with financial problems across the entire company. Parking had also become an issue. AstroWorld relied heavily on parking across the highway near Astrodome. Once Reliant Stadium opened, and that area became busier with the Texans games and the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, that arrangement became much harder to maintain. At the same time, the land underneath AstroWorld was becoming more valuable. Six Flags had to decide whether it made more sense to spend money modernizing the park or close it and sell the property. They chose to sell. AstroWorld closed after its final night of Fright Fest on October 30th, 2005. The rides were removed or demolished, and the entire park was cleared the following year. Six Flags reportedly hoped the land could bring in as much as $150 million. It eventually sold for $77 million, after the company had already spent around $20 million clearing the property. So even the land sale didn't work out quite the way that Six Flags had wanted. Nearly all of what was once AstroWorld is now used as parking for events at NRG Park and the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. Houston didn't suddenly stop being a large market. Today the metro area is even larger than it was when AstroWorld closed. The park disappeared because of its declining performance, physical condition, parking problems, and Six Flags' financial situation all caught up at the same time. So that's worth remembering when we talk about all the money currently going into Texas parks. A growing population gives these companies a very large potential audience, but the park still has to be well operated, it has to keep receiving investment, and the experience has to remain good enough for people to come back. The companies investing in Texas today seem to be approaching the state with much more specific ideas about who they want to attract and what kind of park they want to build, and North Texas gives us some of the clearest examples of that. Universal Kids Resort is probably the most obvious example. Universal could have tried to build another massive destination resort in Texas, but that would have put it in competition with its own parks in California and Florida. Instead, it built a smaller park specifically for families with younger children. Peppa Pig theme park is targeting a similar audience nearby, while Six Flags Over Texas is going in a completely different direction with Tormenta. COTALAND is taking another approach in Austin. The Austin Metro has added roughly 338,000 people since 2020, and now has more than 2.6 million residents. Despite all that growth, Austin has gone decades without a traditional amusement park. COTALAND has the opportunity to serve a large local audience that hasn't really had anything like it.
This is all new territory for me. Yeah.
Then in San Antonio, SeaWorld and Fiesta, Texas already have established audiences. Their investments are about giving those people another reason to return. None of these companies are trying to build the next Walt Disney World in Texas. They're building around the people who already live here and the kinds of visits those people are likely to make. A family in Frisco might visit Universal Kids Resort several times while their children are still young. Someone in Austin could buy a COTALAND season pass and stop by for a few hours. SeaWorld and Fiesta, Texas can keep their pass holders returning by adding new rides and seasonal events. That repeat business is a huge part of how regional parks survive. Single-day tickets are expensive, and most people aren't going to pay full price every weekend. A season pass changes the way someone uses a park. It becomes somewhere that they can visit for an afternoon, return for Halloween or Christmas, and come back whenever something new opens. Texas gives these companies a large audience for that model, and its major cities are still growing. The projects are also spread across several different markets. Universal Kids Resort and Tormenta may both be in North Texas, but they aren't competing for the exact same visit. COTALAND fills a gap in Austin, while the San Antonio parks continue building on audiences they've had for decades. There's more thought behind those projects than simply placing a large park near a large city and assuming people will show up. Each company has found its own reason to invest here. North Texas has some of the clearest examples, with Universal, Six Flags, and Peppa Pig Park making three very different bets on the same growing region. North Texas is getting the most attention right now, and the size of the Dallas-Fort Worth metro helps explain why. More than 8 million people already live in the region, and new communities continue to spread north into places like Frisco, Prosper, and Salina. That growth includes a lot of young families, which is exactly who Universal Kids Resort was built for. Universal opened the park in Frisco in July of 2026, with lands based on characters like Shrek, SpongeBob, Jurassic World, Trolls, and the Minions. The rides are smaller than what you would find at the Universal parks in Orlando or California. The entire experience is designed around younger children, with shorter walking distances, interactive play areas, and attractions families can experience together. Peppa Pig Theme Park opened in North Richland Hills the year before, and it's aimed at an even younger audience. It is a much smaller park, but that is part of what makes it work. Families with preschool-age children don't necessarily need a huge collection of rides. They need a park their kids recognize, attractions they can actually ride, and a day that doesn't become exhausting before lunch. So North Texas now has 2 parks built almost entirely around families with younger children. And then you have Tormenta. Six Flags Over Texas is serving the same region, but it is going after the thrill audience with the largest investment in the park's history. Tormenta stands at 309 feet tall, reaches 87 miles per hour, and has become the world's tallest, fastest, and longest dive coaster. It changed the skyline of the park that has been sitting in the middle of Dallas-Fort Worth since 1961. Six Flags has also rebuilt the surrounding area as Rancho de la Tormenta, so the investment extends beyond the coaster itself. That is a very different project from Universal Kids Resort or Peppa Pig, but that's what makes North Texas so interesting. A parent can take preschoolers to Peppa Pig, visit Universal as that child gets a little older, and eventually have Six Flags waiting for them when they're ready for the bigger rides. Those parks aren't completely separate from one another. Families grow, interests change, and the same household could visit all 3 parks at different points. North Texas is large enough to give each park its own audience without forcing every company to offer the same experience. Austin doesn't have that variety yet. But after years of population growth without a traditional amusement park, COTALAND has been getting ready to see how much demand has been waiting there. Austin is a part of this story that feels a little bit more personal to me. I moved here in 2005 after growing up near Kings Dominion. I was used to having a major amusement park close to home, but Austin didn't have one. Fiesta, Texas became my closest traditional park, about an hour and a half away in San Antonio. If you lived in Austin and wanted that kind of experience, you had to leave the city. Circuit of Americas wouldn't open until 2012. Over time, rides started appearing around the property during events like Formula One and Peppermint Parkway. It was something, but those rides were still mostly connected to specific events. COTALAND changes that. The Austin Metro has grown from about 2.28 million people in 2020 to more than 2.6 million today. That's roughly 338,000 new residents in 5 years. For a metro area that large, the lack of amusement park has always felt a little strange. Now COTALAND is getting ready to fill that gap. The full park officially opened September 26th, with more than 30 rides and attractions spread across nearly 30 acres. Circuit Breaker is one of the signature rides. The Vekoma tilt coaster stops at the top, tilts the entire section of track forward, and releases the train on first drop. Palindrome travels over the roadway before reaching a vertical spike, then completes the course again in reverse. Retro Rambler, formerly known as Texas Wildcat, gives the park a more traditional family coaster, while the remaining lineup includes water rides, flat rides, children's attractions, and several experiences beyond the rides themselves. This is a legitimate amusement park. There is something I think people around Austin may not fully understand yet, especially if their only experience with rides at COTA came during Formula One or Peppermint Parkway. COTALAND has permanent pathways, restaurants, themed spaces, landscaping, and enough variety for families to spend an entire day. I've been covering this project since before construction started, so I've been able to watch those pieces come together over several years. The coasters obviously get most of the attention, but I've been just as encouraged by the amount of effort going into the rest of the property. COTALAND has planted hundreds of native Texas trees, restored areas of blackland prairie, and added shade throughout large portions of the park. The queue lines have shade too, which anyone who visits Texas parks during the summer will appreciate. Those details make the project feel like it was designed for people to stay the day rather than simply arrive, ride a coaster, and then leave. The location at Circuit of Americas also gives the park some advantages. People from around the world already visit the property for Formula One, MotoGP, concerts, and other events throughout the year. COTALAND gives those visitors something else to do while they're there, and it gives people around Austin a reason to visit the property when major events aren't happening. For locals, it means COTA can become somewhere they visit more than once or twice a year. Families can buy season passes and stop by for a few hours and come back for seasonal events or a ride after work. I'm definitely ready to do exactly that. I've lived in the Austin area for more than 20 years, and I spent nearly all that time driving somewhere else whenever I wanted to visit an amusement park. Now I'm finally about to have one close to home. COTALAND will also be within reach of San Antonio, where SeaWorld and Fiesta, Texas have been competing for Central Texas families for years, and both of those parks are continuing to invest in new rides of their own. San Antonio has had two major parks competing for the same regional audience since Fiesta, Texas opened in 1992.
Nothing wrong with a little friendly competition, right?
SeaWorld had already been there for 4 years, but the two parks offered very different experiences. SeaWorld was enormous with marine life exhibits and large shows spread across the entire property. Fiesta, Texas was built inside a former limestone quarry with its original identity surrounded around Texas music and live entertainment. Both parks have changed quite a bit since then. Roller coasters gradually became a larger part of SeaWorld, while Fiesta, Texas developed one of the strongest thrill ride collections in the Six Flags chain. They still feel very different from one another. Fiesta, Texas has a more concentrated collection of attractions built around the quarry. SeaWorld is more spread out, with animal experiences, shows, and Aquatica alongside its rides. So there is a reason people would want to visit both, but the parks are still competing for the same weekends and season pass money. SeaWorld recently opened Barracuda Strike, Texas's first inverted family coaster. It fills a useful spot in SeaWorld's lineup. Younger riders can move up from the park's smallest coasters without immediately jumping onto something like Great White or Texas Stingray. Fiesta, Texas is taking the family thrill ride idea much further with Werewolf Gorge in 2027. Werewolf Gorge will have a 39-inch height requirement, 4 launches, and more than 4,100 feet of track. It'll be the longest coaster in Fiesta, Texas's history and the longest family launch coaster in the world. The ride is being built around the quarry in Crackaxle Canyon, with a story about an abandoned silver mine and the strange creatures supposedly living inside of it. Six Flags hasn't shared the full project cost, so I can't say exactly where it ranks among the park's largest investments, but based on the size of the project, it has to be one of the most substantial attractions Fiesta, Texas has ever taken on. This is more than 4,100 feet of coaster track. The project includes 4 launches, a tunnel, custom buildings, themed queue exhibits, and an original story designed around the quarry. I really think Werewolf Gorge could set a new standard for attraction investments in Texas. Tormenta is obviously much larger in terms of height and speed, but Werewolf Gorge is ambitious in a different way. Fiesta, Texas is putting one of its largest attraction projects behind a ride that an entire family can experience together. The 39-inch height requirement opens it to younger children, while the launches, length, and airtime should still give older riders plenty to enjoy. Texas parks have built plenty of record-breaking coasters. Werewolf Gorge feels like an investment in the complete experience surrounding the coaster too. If it works, I think other parks in the state will pay attention. Universal Kids and Peppa Pig are already focused heavily on younger families, and COTALAND is opening with major coasters alongside large collection of family attractions. SeaWorld and Fiesta, Texas are also building rides that parents and children can experience together. That doesn't mean that Texas parks are moving away from thrill rides. Tormenta makes that pretty clear. It means parks are finding ways to make major investments accessible to more of the people walking through the gate. And that could be especially important in Central Texas. COTALAND will give families in Austin and San Antonio another option. Someone living in New Braunfels, San Marcos, Round Rock, or Pflugerville will have 3 major amusement parks within a reasonable drive. Those families may still visit all 3, but every new option makes the competition for their time and season pass money a little bit more interesting. SeaWorld and Fiesta, Texas have pushed each other in San Antonio for decades. Now COTALAND is joining the Central Texas market, and Werewolf Gorge is showing that Fiesta, Texas is prepared to invest to make themselves stay relevant.
Gentlemen, to stay ahead of our enemies in the space race, we've got to do something sensational.
I don't think this current wave of construction ends once these rides and this park opens. Texas has several things working in its favor that are different from most other states to match. The biggest is that Texas doesn't depend on one city to support its amusement industry. 5 of the 15 largest cities in the country are now in Texas: Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin. Those cities also anchor 4 enormous metropolitan areas, and each one can support its own regional attractions. Most of those cities sit within the Texas Triangle. Dallas-Fort Worth forms a northern point, Houston sits to the southeast, and Austin and San Antonio run along the western side. The highways connecting those cities give parks access to more than their immediate local population. That gives Texas parks overlapping audiences without placing every attraction in the same crowded tourism district. Most visits will still come from local families and season pass holders, but the parks can also pull people from other parts of the state when they open something worth traveling for. Texas parks can also operate during much more of the year than parks in colder parts of the country. The summer heat is a real challenge, but the calendar doesn't end in August. Halloween and Christmas become major attendance periods. Spring break can be busy, and plenty of winter weekends are warm enough for parks to operate comfortably. That longer calendar gives companies more opportunities to sell season passes and build events around times of year that used to be considered off-season. The audience is also becoming more familiar with visiting parks regularly. Family might have season passes to SeaWorld one year and Six Flags Fiesta Texas the next. They might add COTALAND because it's closer to home, or plan a weekend in North Texas to visit Universal. As more options become available, amusement parks become a more normal part of how Texas families spend their free time. Population alone couldn't save AstroWorld, so none of this guarantees success. The parks still have to operate well. They need to continue investing after the excitement of opening year wears off, and they need to give people a reason to renew their passes. Texas doesn't need to become another Orlando or become a major amusement park player. It can become one of the strongest regional park markets in the country, with several large cities supporting different parks and enough people traveling between them to make major investments worthwhile. And I think the next stage of growth could come from the other parts of Texas that still aren't being fully served. Houston is the biggest unanswered question in all of this. The metro area has more than 7 million people, yet it still doesn't have a major traditional amusement park. Kemah Boardwalk and Galveston's Pleasure Pier offer rides, but neither one replaces what AstroWorld provided. That doesn't mean a new park could simply open in Houston tomorrow and succeed. AstroWorld already showed us that huge population isn't enough by itself. Land cost, highway access, parking, weather, and long-term investments would all have to make sense. Building an entirely new amusement park is also much more expensive than adding rides to a property that already exists. But it is hard to believe that a market that large will remain underserved forever. Houston has millions of local residents and a large tourism industry. It also sits within driving distance of San Antonio, Austin, and the parks along the Gulf Coast. If another major amusement company wants to enter Texas, Houston would have to be part of the conversation. Growth doesn't come from an entirely new park, though. COTALAND is opening its first complete version, but the property at Circuit of the Americas gives it room to evolve. Universal Kids was designed around a smaller format, but its arrival in Frisco gives Universal a permanent presence in one of the fastest growing parts of North Texas. SeaWorld San Antonio still has a tremendous amount of land, and Fiesta Texas continues to find ways to use its quarry in ways that would have seemed impossible when the park opened. The next phase of growth may come from those existing parks expanding what they already offer. COTALAND could continue filling out its attraction lineup. SeaWorld could make better use of its available space. Fiesta Texas could continue to build on the level of investment we're seeing with Werewolf Gorge. Universal could decide its smaller Texas concept has room to grow if families respond well to it. None of these things are guaranteed, but the audience gives these parks a reason to consider them. That may be the biggest difference between Texas now and the Texas amusement market 20 years ago. AstroWorld was closing. Austin had no amusement park, and San Antonio parks weren't investing in the level we're seeing today. Now Austin is getting a home park, Universal has entered North Texas, Six Flags is building major record-breaking attractions, and Central Texas is becoming more competitive. There's still some obvious gaps, but there's also a lot more momentum than Texas has had in a very long time. And the parks that are successful now will help determine how much more investment comes next. Now, I don't expect Texas to become another Orlando, and I don't think that should be the goal. Texas is developing into something different. Instead of one tourism district filled with destination resorts, the state has several large regional markets supporting their own parks. And that history goes all the way back to Six Flags Over Texas, proving that a major theme park could survive by a regional audience alone. AstroWorld also reminded us that large populations doesn't guarantee a park's future. The investments happening now seem to reflect both sides of that history. The audience is here, but these companies are being much more deliberate about what they build for it. Universal designed a park for young families. Six Flags built one of the largest thrill coasters in the world. Fiesta, Texas is putting serious resources behind a family coaster that could change what major attractions look like in the state. And COTALAND is creating a permanent home park for one of the country's fastest growing metro areas. Those projects don't feel like copies of one another. Each one makes sense for its park and the people living around it. That's why I think Texas is becoming a major amusement park player. The state has the population, several large tourism markets, and a calendar that allows parks to operate during most of the year. More importantly, the level of investment is beginning to match the size of the opportunity. For me, COTALAND is probably the clearest example of how much has changed. I moved to Austin in 2005 and accepted that visiting an amusement park meant driving to another city. Now I've bought a season pass to a park I've watched grow from an idea into something Austin can finally call its own. And that park is opening at the same time Universal's entering North Texas, Tormenta is changing the skyline in Arlington, and Fiesta, Texas is preparing one of the most ambitious attractions ever. That is a very different Texas amusement park industry from the one I moved into 20 years ago. There will be challenges, and every one of these parks will have to keep earning repeat visits after the opening excitement wears down. But Texas has more parks, more competition, and more reasons for companies to keep investing than it has in a very long time, and I'm ready to see where that goes. I know this was a long one, so thank you to everybody for hanging out with me here on ThrillNerds. Of all the projects happening across Texas, I'm curious to know which one you think will have the biggest long-term impact on the state. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around the parks.